So much quieter this week, much more peaceful. Enjoy yourself, mingle, since it was sitting room only last week. This week we have JT Robinson.
Yeah.
JT's been skiing around the Ogden Mountains for, I don't know, 20-some-ish years. He's like 42 or something now, and he moved here when he was 18, so you can do the math. Yeah, he's really old. We were talking about you earlier, Greg. You're getting a little gray too, bud. So, JT, I called it Rants with JT. He tried to change it in the spreadsheet many times to like something really kind and generous, like he would if you know him. And I just kept going back and switching it to Rants. But yeah, he's a good Midwestern boy. I know there's a lot of Great Lakes folks in the house. Yeah. So yeah, he's going to talk about, what did you call it? Mentorship and apprentice. It's not rants. He's not going to rant at you, just a little bit. Okay, JT.
Yeah. In Corey's defense, it's mentorship apprentice and like a role of backcountry etiquette. And so anytime you talk about backcountry etiquette, it definitely gets ranty. And so I think we were at the chairlift when he was asking me if I wanted to do this, and I was explaining this idea I had, and he goes, "Oh yeah, rants with JT. That's what we're gonna go with." And then I saw it and he actually did it, and I was like, "Oh, maybe we'll just like lighten that up a little bit." But no, I'm cool. Let's do it. Is that got me? Cool. Oh. This one. Okay. I'll just turn this way. So, okay, the whole thing. So let me just move this over. Here we go. So the whole concept of this idea started with the idea of mentorship. And I teach avalanche courses a lot. I've taught probably half the people in the room, your area one. And at the end of every like avalanche type course, I do this thing. I say like mentor, peer, apprentice, which down here on the bottom there. And I talk about it from the perspective of like, oh, you've taken a course. Now you go forth and be backcountry citizens. And I say, be a mentor, be a peer, and be an apprentice. And so like pushing these things out, like, yeah, go be an apprentice, go find a mentor. That's what we always talk about in these avalanche courses. And mentorship is like the buzzword. And so now it's become like the thing, like, you want the keys to the kingdom? You go find a mentor. That mentor will take you all the places you ever wanted to be. And so like we keep talking about that in these courses, and then afterwards I see people around or whatever, and they like coming up and they're talking about trying to find a mentor all the time. Like, where do I find one? How do I find one? And we even got some of these groups now that some of the folks are affiliated, especially the women's groups do it really well, where like they're building in mentorship into programming, because so many people are like, how do I find a mentor? How do I actually get a mentor? It's really hard to find. And like people get social awkwardness and stuff like that too. So it's like, I started to think about this as like Corey mentioned, I came here when I was 18, and maybe this is my disclaimer part for the etiquette part, is I broke all those rules when I showed up at 18, and now I'm 43 years old. Yeah, 43, not quite 42. Appreciate the little downgrade a little bit, but I broke all these rules because I couldn't like ever really get the information. And so I'm pushing all this stuff out in these avalanche courses. And then I start thinking about it as I age into more of a mentorship role. And I'm like, no one really talks about etiquette much. And I started looking around the internet, and I couldn't find like really good etiquette stuff. And I'm like, well, that feels a lot like kind of part of the thing. And then I started to think about myself as like moving into a mentorship role. And I'm thinking about like, if I'm sitting in the parking lot and someone brand new to the backcountry pulls up and he immediately just parks like a total jerk and jumps out and it starts chatting me up and wants to talk about routes, but I'm already upset about the way they parked at the trailhead. And I'm like, well, they just showed up. They don't know any better. And I'm supposed to be this like mentorship role, but like if there was some etiquette stuff out in the world a little more like prevalent, then maybe they would know like rule number 1, show up to the trailhead and park respectfully. And like the key is like too, even if you don't know how to do it, you show up and you see the old timer like me sitting on the back of the van tailgate, and you shout out the window like, hey, my first time here, how should I park here? And then I'm like, oh yeah, park right here because then when this and this happens, and I'm like, now I'm engaged. And they like, either they understood some etiquette or they just took the right step at the beginning. And now like the mentorship door is opened versus if they just rolled up and like parked like crazy. Does that make sense? And so we talk about all that. And then so I'm looking around to find this stuff and it's kind of sparse. In the summertime, I build trails. A lot of time on a mini excavator with podcasts in my ears. And so I've listened to these podcasts all the time. Coming into fall, I start listening to winter-related stuff. And I come across these guys and called Mind the Track. It's a guy, Kurt Gensheimer and Tom Beckering. They're from Tahoe. Kurt's the trail whisperer. He talks about like single track and mountain biking and all that stuff in the summertime. Tom is like the local like backcountry ski legend in this region of Tahoe. They call him Pow Bat. And so they're talking on the podcast, and Tom gets to this part where he talks about, he names it, because he started thinking about the same thing kind of. And so as soon as I heard it, I'm like starting to tune in. He talks about the 10 shred commandments. And they do this whole episode where Tom lays out these 10 things that he thinks are a good place to start for etiquette. Because he kind of felt the same way, like he started looking around, he couldn't really find much, so he just did one. And so I'm sitting on my excavator and I'm listening to this and I'm like, this is it. This is what I'm talking about. So I get home, I send Kurt an email and I'm like, hey dude, like that was awesome. We do these like Ogden Avalanche talks. I teach these avalanche courses and like there's this piece missing for etiquette. Do you mind if I take your 10 shred commandments and build it into this presentation? And he was like, oh yeah, of course. So he was all in on it. I just texted him like a week ago to kind of double check. He's like, I'm on a hut trip in Canada right now, but this is sweet. So I'm going to take some time. And he like laid it all out for me again. I was like, yeah, good mentorship right there. Thanks, Tom. They even gave me a shout out on the podcast. I was stoked. So starting from the first, well, let me back up just a second. There is one little story I want to share that kind of like helps contextualize some of this too. Like when I was young, showed up at 18, knew nothing, broke most of these rules, found people to mentor me, and then even got dumped by a mentor for a perceived backcountry etiquette violation, as I've come to understand later in years. But like I was a young kid and he would like show me things. I didn't know this stuff and apparently crossed the line where he's like, no more mentorship for you. You're out in the cold. Thankfully, I had others. But that was part of what made me think of this too, was like, I've been in that situation before. So, number one from Tom, and why I kind of brought it up first thing is, don't park like a kook. In Tahoe, where these guys are from, this is a huge deal. They don't have a ton of access, so they'll like full on like jump out if they're parking on the roadside. They will shovel out the snowbank on the side so they can get their vehicles in off the road, because in their space in Tahoe, if you're over that white line, like you're breaking the rules. So for them, this is even bigger. But for us, we have our own issues too. If any of you ski at North Fork Park at the North Gate on the weekends, you know all about that, right? So access is huge. And we have the same thing up there with the Durfee Creek neighborhood. Like these people are all about it. But if we abuse that little corner and make their lives difficult, it's probably going to make our lives difficult. So we want to be respectful, and we want to do the best we can with how we park, and especially over there at North Fork Park. Number two, Tom says, is group size matters. So big groups are a time and place, as he described it. And the example he used in the podcast is he talked about this one Cody Townsend 50 episode where it was like the last hurrah one or whatever he was doing, and they all went out and party skied. And he's like, that's a time and place situation. You do that in the time and in the place where you can have a big group and have a good time and not be like kind of way off the charts. What we usually talk about for group size is like 2 to 5 people as a good group size on your average backcountry tour. As you can see in this picture here, I have a Area 1 group with 17 people charging up the slope. This particular day, some guy was skiing out and he's like, pretty big group. as he like flew by me, and I was like, yeah, I get it. Like, it's an avalanche course. Like, this is probably a time and place where it's okay to have a big group when you're actually doing an avalanche course. But that being said, 2 to 5 people, that's where we like to be with group size if we can have it that way. Another one they talk about in that podcast, which I have fond memories of myself, is dogs in the backcountry. Some people love having dogs. Some people don't love having dogs. Is there terrain that's appropriate for a dog or not appropriate for a dog? This is me and my golden girl, Murphy, ski and pow. For me personally, it was like small slope powder with my dog was fantastic. But I wasn't taking her up on big stuff, except for one day she was not having it in the springtime. She's like, no, I am not getting back in that car. I'm going with you. But that was just Lightning Ridge in the spring after they were closed, so I give myself a little grace there. But I had a story once. I was up in Hatcher Pass in Alaska, and these people had their dog up on the ridge, and it was big terrain. What's that? There's the one ridge, I'm blanking the name right now. It doesn't matter. Big ridge, big chutes. They got their dog. We meet them on the ridge. We've got a whole team up on the ridge doing our thing. And the 2 people drop in, and the dog's like, nope, not going in there. And so then here's me and my buddies on the ridge, and the 2 people who own the dog are like 3 turns deep in the chute, and they're yelling up at us, just push him in. And I'm like, oh, man. I couldn't do it. My buddy pushes the dog in. The dog eats, starts flying right at these 2 people in a slide and almost wipes them out off the hillside too. So for me personally, that day I was like, dogs in low angle terrain. I'm not going to take them up to the chute. That said, there are some dogs that shred better than me, so I'm not going to bag on anybody. But it's something to think about when you're going out of the backcountry, or if you're going out with a group and you're the dog guy and you love bringing your dog. It's like, hey, maybe just ask them, mind if I bring the dog? And they're like, yeah, I love dogs. Sven's got a whole channel of like just dogs, Instagram dog stuff. I'm here for it, buddy. I love it. Number 3, shred within your ability. So he goes on to talk about group dynamic and similar abilities on the tour. We've all got the story where your ripper friend brings her boyfriend and he's terrible, right? So that's the other thing to think about when you're putting your groups together, right? Is how good's the fitness? What are the objectives? And you either tailor the tour to the group or you tailor the group to the tour, right? So if you want to bring the boyfriend who can't ride, you go out on a day with me when we're meadow skipping and we have a blast. When they want to go for the big objective, maybe you're calling your friends that are for the big objective and you go to your boyfriend like, sorry, bud, today's just not the day for you. Going out with the homies. Have dinner on the table when I get back. Number 4, the title of the podcast, Mind the Track. This one has quite a few facets in it. Tom went off on this one for a good while, which makes a lot of sense, right? It's the name of the podcast. So the first thing he talks about is use established routes. And this is a little one for us that's not as cut and dried or black and white as it might be for them where they are. We don't have the guidebook. We don't have tons of information that tells you where all these established routes are. So we give each other a little grace when you go up to Cutler Ridge and you see something really weird. You're like, hey, someone came here for the first time and they're trying to go there. That's probably the way to go. Ran into 2 guys actually Wednesday or Tuesday or something. And it was that same situation where like came up on them. They're like, oh, hey, we've been here once. We go around. So I started talking about some different routes, and someone had put up a route that I was like, maybe not that one. And so when I went by it, I told them, I'm like, when I go by that route, I'll write no in the snow right next to it. And I'll write yes right over here, because that's the established route. That's the one that the OGs that came well before me figured out was the best way to get to these different places we're going. And when you come up to it, sometimes intuition's like, yeah, I'm trying to get there. You just go there. You don't know that it comes up around the back. So that's where we can all help each other, and you do it in a nice, kind, communal way. Say, yeah, this is the way to go. The next one we talked about is low angle skin tracks. I'm a big fan of this one. I know Colton likes to go straight up, but I'm more of a low angle skin track kind of guy. I heard once about some study that maybe the military did that was like 12 to 15 degrees. Like that's the window you want to be in for your skin track. I don't know if it was true, but it totally lined up with my confirmation bias. So I'm like 12 to 15 degrees, low angle skin tracks. The idea is it's efficient. Maybe you put on a little more distance, but it's efficient. And if now that Scotty dude is gone and isn't setting the morning skinners up most of the Ogden routes, if we can set a good skin track that's nice angle, goes in good places in the morning, and then everybody else kind of just jumps on, then we're setting ourselves up for success. Notice one or two spots on the Cutler Ridgeline. Those skin tracks getting a little steep for me. I don't know if you guys know I use fish scales. I don't want to put skins on. If you smash out the track, you should probably fix it. Even if you're the trail breaker and you end up face down against a log, fix the skin track. This is a little bit of an extreme example, but most of the time when you're doing this is when you see it, and I can blame my soft boot splitboard friends a lot of times, is the side hill skin track, right? And they hit that bottom one and it splooshes out the bottom and you just keep going. And then I come up behind with my fish scales and I get no traction and you smash it out. There's a little trick you can do. You smash it out, cuts in, right? Cut that edge back in, pull a little snow up, stomp it down. It's like returning the shopping cart at the grocery store. It's like, yeah, let's help each other out. I was guiding a few of my old high school buddies this weekend, and they were smashing a few out near the end of the one day. And I was like, I'm just going to fix all this for you guys. I got you, high school buds. We go back. Boot packing and skin tracks, classic. I don't feel like I need to even talk about that. I don't even have a picture of that one now that I think about it, but yeah, we'll get to that next. Boot packing and skin tracks, the old classic, right? If you want to boot pack and there is a skin track, set your own boot pack. And then the next person that comes in will see your sweet boot pack and use it too. They'll see you at the bar and buy you a beer for your sweet boot pack. Similar issue we have these days at Cutler Ridge with snowshoers, but you know, we all got to share, so we can't get too crazy with that. But if you can, don't use the boot pack or the skin track for the boot pack. And I also like to flip it around a little bit, like don't skin in the boot pack. Someone laid a nice boot pack, maybe don't skin through their boot pack. And then the specific one for us, Ogden Nordic Trails, we talk about mind the track. I talk about this at all my avalanche courses too. When we first roll up onto Cutler and we get down by the creek and you first see this exact scene right here, I go into a whole spiel about, and it's good for us too. Like the Ogden Nordic Trail system is fantastic. They do a great job. It's a huge benefit. They're like almost all volunteers. So like, not only buy the pass, right? But like mind the track. This little 2-track thing, don't mess with that thing. They love that thing. They work really hard to keep it that way. And like Nordic skiers are in way better shape than you. I don't care who you are. They will outlast you in any confrontation, I guarantee it. Guaranteed. But just the other day, I saw this one from a local guy. And Ron's a backcountry skier too, so he gets it. But he was like, hey guys, maybe not. They really don't like that. That's a full-out GS carve right through the middle of it. When I get in the flow and like not paying attention and accidentally step into it, that's a little different than that right there. But again, that's, you know, not everybody knows this stuff. So we go out with our friends, we help each other out. You say, hey, don't mess with the Nordies. They're tough and they're in fantastic shape. Number 5, Tom says, don't be a bad bogey. This is so Tom also spends a lot of time in the High Sierra, in Mammoth World, where you got couloirs for decades. And you can come up to the bottom one. If there's somebody else in the couloir already, then maybe you go to the one right next to it. For us here in Ogden, we don't have tons and tons of chutes and couloir skiing, so it's a little different. But his point is, don't be a bad bogey. If you come up from behind, come up respectfully. If you're there and someone's about to ski and you're just about to enter, it's like, okay, maybe I'll wait behind the cliff band for them to ski their line. before I boot up that thing. Don't ski up ski lines. This one is more appropriate for our setting. This is the infamous Mark White Spindrift 65, the sickest zipper photos on Instagram. But this is him complaining about the even more infamous Mount Superior up track in the apron of this up track, which is like, as an avalanche instructor, I puked in my mouth a little bit, but as a backcountry skier, I puked in my mouth a bit again, because it's like, not only are you exposing yourself to quite a bit of exposure, but you're also like tracking up right up the apron where everybody wants to exit ski. When Mark White's not happy about it, like, you know, I mean, he complains about a lot of stuff. He'll probably have a better rant session than I could, but this one is kind of like one for the books that to this day I still cannot wrap my head around. But thankfully, we don't have anything that intense here in Ogden. We do have this one I got from a few years back in a classic place in Cutler that kind of shows the similar thing. Good ski line, classic ski line, avalanche path right here, skin track right through the middle of it. And it's not like the tracks weren't there to let you know that this is where people like to ski. But the idea is you don't want to put a big old Skinner right up the middle of stuff that we all want to ski. Later on, he talks about powder as a limited resource, but it's nice to have a nice, clean, pristine line laid out in front of you without having to smash into a skin track. Sometimes it's unavoidable. You got to do what you got to do. But when we can, let's try not to put our skin tracks right up things that we actually want to ski. Number 6, no half lapping. He says, go to the top and ride it to the bottom. Mid-slope traverses and understand fall line. Here's a classic in the Cutler Ridge area. These folks came from somewhere over here, traversed all the way across the entire thing, and then made a couple turns, kept right on going all the way to B Street Thursday night. No, yeah, it's tough. It's me. It was me. No, I'm kidding. Mid-slope traverse, right? So if you're here for the day and you've skied up above there and you come into Indicator Hill and you start rolling in, you're like, yeah, I got Indicator first tracks. And then you get to there. You're like, nope, I got traverses, like it's underneath the Sisters at Snow Basin or something. Yeah. Here's another good one. If you've ever seen this area, this, ooh, don't spill beer on the computer. I just got that thing. The computer. Beer's fine. There'll be plenty more where those came from. This is the classic area just above Snow Basin, the race start shoots. Skiing, and like if you see the larger of this picture, like I kind of understand it a little bit, you know, it's a bit of a bench, and then you can come over here and you can catch the flank. But top to bottom, right? And as a ski guy, we talk about lanes all the time, and we'll get into that in a bit here when we go to the next one too. But like you want to preserve lanes. So ski the fall line, top to bottom. And you got to understand the fall line to make that happen. Now let's talk about ride the fall line. As Tom likes to say, what did he say? STFD. It's a swear word in the middle of that, so I'll keep it PG-13. But straight the F down. Straight down. If you poured water out on top of the line, where's the water going to go? That's the fall line. Sometimes you can get away with some Swiss line stuff because the line calls for it, but in the majority of the time, straight down the fall line. You Snow Basin people, springtime after they close Strawberry, Middle Bowl Cirque. Oh my God, that felt so good. Because you got getting all the traverses and different things that happens there, and you get a chance to just STFD that thing. Straight down the fall line. The next one here, stack tracks. This is a wonderful example of stacking tracks. Corey Davis right here, showing you how it's done. No one lays a zipper like Corey. You can see mine's not so tight. But the same thing, Corey and I skied this area. We did a bunch of laps. There's me, there's Corey. There's me, there's Corey. Next run, we came back, got more there, got more there, got more there, got more there, got more there. Leave room for more lines. And then have a nice signature. Corey Davis. Look at that thing. I mean, I'd like to think my photography plays into it a little bit, but that's beautiful. Have a nice signature. It's nothing better than you ski a nice fresh line, you come out from underneath it, and you look back up at it, and you're like, yeah, there it was. Ooh, look at that one. You guys know this guy, Weston Shirey out in the Uintas. He even figure eighted it. That's the next level. You don't need to go that far. But that sure is pretty. That's a good example of fall line, and it's a exemplary example of stacking tracks and leaving room for other people. And the other thing he talks about is geomarking skills. And so in more complex lines, sometimes it's hard to see the fall line once you get up above it. But there's something you can do, and free skiers, like you probably know this trick a lot, is you got to be able to take a line and inspect it from the bottom or as you're approaching, and then flip it around in your head and put all those pieces together. So you pick your geomarkers as you're coming up, maybe even take a picture, and you're like, this tree to this rock, to this spine, to this apron. Got it. And then you flip that around in your brain, because anytime you get on top of a line, everything looks different at that point. But that's a skill that you can practice and get better at. Just pick out your geomarkers, flip it around in your brain, so then you hit it. As you're skiing that fall line, you're like, yep, everything's confirming. I'm in the fall line. There went the tree. There went the rock. There's the spine. Out into the apron. Toes on the nose. Some telly moves. We won't get too crazy. Don't worry, it's not contagious. Unless you want it to be. Then we can talk later. Be a good mentor. So this is kind of obviously part of the whole idea of this entire thing. But he says good influence trickles through, and he says empathy and compassion. And so kind of with this whole thing, the whole reason I was thinking about this is me moving into being a mentorship role from being an 18-year-old kid from Wisconsin with skinny skis and knows how to ski moguls, and that's about it. Thinking back sometimes now where I'm at the trailhead and someone parks like a jerk, and I'm like, crusty old ski guy. And I'm like, remember when you were 18 and you showed up? Like, it was way worse than that. Like, give the guy or give the gal a break and bring him in. And so a lot of the folks here are like pretty tied into the community and are also finding themselves in mentorship roles. And so like, we'll have some fun, we'll do some rants and all this kind of stuff. And if you're hearing about this stuff for the first time, great. But if you're like more of a mentorship type role, try to remember what it was like when you were in those shoes. Have some empathy and compassion and invite these people in. There's some other places regionally that have a little more like abrasive localism than we do. And I think that's something that we don't necessarily need to aspire to. We can be the kinder, gentler backcountry community and take care of each other, because we're still not relatively busy out there. And so 9 times out of 10, if it's like me and 2 other people on Cutler Ridge and they hear me yell bloody avalanche, like, I hope they're stoked with the way I was talking to them earlier. Come on over and give me a hand. And oftentimes that's what happens in accidents too, is it's another party that comes up on top of us. So we can all talk to each other and not be like, I'm not telling you where I'm going. I'm like, no, I'm going over here. If things get weird, pay attention, because I don't know or whatever. Like, we're all out there together. So have some empathy and compassion. Talk to each other. Don't gatekeep about where you're going necessarily. I mean, you don't have to tell them everything, but be like, oh, we're going to be over in this area. Keep an eye out. Okay, this one gets rowdy, especially for me. So when Tom talked about this, he's talked about practice social media delay. So this is a strategy that he likes and he promotes with his friends and people in the Tahoe area, is when conditions are firing, delay your glory posts. I personally don't have, well, we'll get to that in a minute. So what he's saying is basically like powder is a limited resource. And like surfing is kind of this, he compares it to surfing. Like, he says the surfers have a good, like a good culture of this as well. Where it's like when the swell is firing or when the pow is on, we're going to collect our photos. And then once it's kind of like almost over, then we're like, look at the last 3 days I had. It was all time. But anybody who's seeing that didn't know, those 3 days are in the past. They missed it. The swell has subsided. The powder has been chomped by all the people, and you've delayed your glorified post. I'll just go through the list first, and then I'll talk about my personal situation. But they talked about ambiguous location. So like, maybe you can say like, I'm in Ogden, but you don't have to say like, I put the sickest mid-slope traversing on Indicator Hill today, just above the LZ on Cutler Ridge. Like, yeah, maybe you don't need to do it quite that specifically. So that's what he's saying, ambiguous location, if you're talking about the location. And his other rule is no Strava, or maybe this is my rule. I don't remember which one, but I added a few of these of my own, of course. No Strava GPX published openly online, which that's, here's where we get to the ranty stuff, right? Like we all have these things we like to do, and everyone's free to do what they want. It's just a discussion. I'm just presenting ideas, but do your thing. But like maybe think about it before you're like on the Facebook forum, like, killer day, here's my track right where I went. You can go there too. All you need to do is upload this app and it will take you right there. My personal line for that is like, I don't share anything on open forums. Like if I have someone that sends me a message and they're like, hey, I was trying to find this route to this one place and I missed this. You know anything about that? I'm like, all right, they're doing the research. They're doing the thing. I can help point them in a little better direction. Shoot me a direct message and we'll talk. But I'm not putting it on the forum wide open for everybody, but make your own choices. And then he says ambiguous, or I think maybe this one, maybe mine too, ambiguous photos as possible. I've gotten in trouble for this one a bunch. If you can take a photo that's kind of more ambiguous and doesn't like show the exact location, fantastic. That always helps. Sometimes the view is part of the thing, so you do the thing. But if you don't have to blast it and show the exact thing, then maybe we try to do it a little better. And so now you see my beautiful Instagram profile. I'm a former professional skier who was committed to the cell, and now I'm a ski guide who has to have people hire me to take them actually skiing. So it turns out I have to be on the internet telling them how rad I am and how great of a time they can have if they come ski with me. In my athlete days especially, and I think this was probably also part of getting dumped by my mentor too, but I got to be on here. I got to do the thing. And so I've had all kinds of different stuff on this. And so when I talk to friends and stuff, and they're telling me about something that happened online, I'm like, oh, well, let me tell you one thing. Like I've seen, so all these things. So I've had it where like I put up a picture, and if you know, I call it if you know, you know. Or I'm like, oh, I'm in the woods in this one spot, and I put up this picture, and someone calls me and they're like, dude, why'd you put that picture on the internet? I'm like, dude, you know that spot. Because you know, you know. If you don't know that exact spot, you have no idea where I am in the world. So there's like that part of it. And then I've also had where like promoting Ogden, I had someone created an anonymous account at one point to troll me for promoting Ogden backcountry skiing. And I was like, yeah, dude, sorry. I get it. I understand localism and all of that, but such it is. So my point with telling you my deals with this is like, this is one of those ones where it's like, you got to make your own choices about what you do and don't want to do. There's some hardcores out there who are like, nothing I don't even have an internet account. I'm not even on Instagram. That's how secretive I am. And I'm going to hide every skin track and do, so you got to make your own choices about that, but consider that type of stuff too. And like sometimes too, people don't want to be on my Instagram account. I don't know why. It's like, come on. Content, right? No, but like that's something to think about too, because like from my athlete days, it was like promote. Now I'm a ski guide. I'm like, gotta sell the service. And like some people are just skiers, and they're like, no, I don't really need to be blasted on your Instagram story, front row center, tagged with my favorite song. You can just maybe from a distance, that would be fine. But it doesn't hurt to ask somebody, right? Like, hey, I got this sick photo of you. Would you like to would be okay if I used it on my Instagram. Or what I do nowadays too is I'll send it to them first. Like, I got this rad photo of you here. It's yours. Use it if you want. And then if they don't post it in like 2 or 3 days, then I'm probably putting it up. But at least I gave them the chance to have first right of refusal. Yeah. Yeah. So he added the social media delay part. I kind of expanded to like other stuff because like I've seen it on the forum stuff too from time to time where like people gets rowdy. And every once in a while I get tagged on some of that where someone's like, hey, he usually has a good perspective on this, like add to the situation. And that's another part where we come back to be a good mentor, right? Have a little empathy and compassion and be like, hey, bro, like that's why they're yelling at you. Shoot me a direct message and I'll help guide your research a little bit for you so you don't have to go on there and do what you just did with your GPX line. And number 10 was kind of a catch-all where he says, just don't be a jerk. He used a different word than jerk, but like they get to say what they want on their podcast. And I'm thinking maybe I'll keep it more PG. But so I changed it to that. But he goes on to a few things, right? And this is another one of those things like Bluetooth speakers. I have weird taste in music. I love bluegrass music. Almost no one loves bluegrass music, but I love bluegrass music. But no one wants to hear my music. Personally, if I'm going to do tunes at all, I don't usually, but that's the whole crunchy thing. We won't get into that. That's a different rant. But I put one in. If I want to listen to tunes or something, just one earbud in the ear. Now I can still hear my buddies yelling at me. I can still hear an avalanche ripping down on top of my head. I can not force Brandon to listen to my bluegrass music. Yeah. So I just do one. That's for me. That's my thing. 2, no go, right? I had a buddy who always used to pop 2 in and go, and he was kind of a rabbit, and he would take off. And next thing I know, he's like 2 or 3 or 400 vertical feet out in front of me. And I'm like, dude. And then he stops and lanes planes out. I'm like, hey, I got caught in an avalanche back there. Did you know about that? Like, no. I'm like, I called you on the radio even. It said avalanche. Did you hear that? No, I didn't hear that. I'm like, yeah, cool. Maybe you can just pop one out. But whatever, the Bluetooth speaker thing, you hear about it in mountain biking a lot too, and all of that. So consider that when you strap your Bluetooth to your handlebars and go ripping through the local mileage. And then, of course, the classic LNT, leave no trace. This is the pretty well subscribed stuff at this point. Like you take it out, you bring it back. I probably don't need to get too deep into the orange peels and peeing on the skin track thing, but I guess that's part of that. Pick up, toss dog poop. This is one I think is relevant, right? Like if you're gonna bring the dog, if you can pick it up and deal with that, pick it up, but at a minimum, like maybe just toss it off to the side. We're not in watershed necessarily, but like, I don't know. Pick it up if you can pick it up, but toss it if you got to. And then the don't be a jerk. That's kind of standard stuff. My wife always, we talk about our kids and stuff. My wife's like, I just want them to be kind. I want them to be nice, kind people. I think this falls into that category. Just be a kind person. And then buy the trail breaker a beer. Tom was pretty adamant about that one. You go out, you see someone breaking the trail, you catch up with them at the Shooting Star afterwards, you're like, I saw you. You get a free beer today. You did good work. What's that? Unless it's steep and cuts across ski lines. Yeah. Then it's like, I saw what you did today. You're buying me a beer. And Keenan a beer. Okay. So to bring the whole thing, a question. Oh, yeah. So I don't know if you follow the Utah Backcountry Forum, there's like pages and pages about don't pee in the skin track and don't throw your orange peels in the skin track. It's quite amazing. You'd think that one would have trickled through the culture at this point, but I guess, it's people just like get fired up. I think it's a bit of a meme at this point now, but okay, bringing the whole thing back full circle. Mentor, peer, apprentice. Mentorship is super important. And these types of things, we can help people. What's the right word to put it? No, we will pander. Let's go with pander. Pander to the mentor type people like me by having good etiquette and like coming up and pulling up to the trailhead and saying, hey, old timer, where do I park? Now we're right doing the thing, right? So that's the mentor part. We've covered that one at length. The peer part and the apprentice, or the peer part and the apprentice part. So have an apprentice. A lot of times when I come out of these courses, it's like an Area 1, and they're like, what do I know? I'm just Area 1. And I'm like, but you might know a little cousin or a nephew or a niece or someone who like wants to get into the backcountry, and you can help show them the steps to the way to do these things. The peer one, I think, is the relationship that is undervalued. We always are going, go find a mentor, go apprentice somebody. The peer one is a really important relationship because I think that's where the most learning actually happens. Because you go out with your mentors, you just fall in behind, you're learning, you're figuring things out. But when you come back and you go with your peers and they bring stuff from their mentors and you go out and you know it's your peers that you go like test your mettle with, right? Those are the ones you're going to go like push out into that next place or do that next thing. That's where you're going to try all these things out. You don't almost never like push it when you got your mentor watching you. You're just like following in line and eating the things he tells you to eat and doing the thing. But when you're with your peers, that's when you're pushing it, right? And you're bringing stuff from different mentors to your peer group. And so that's a super important relationship that I don't think we talk about much in the avalanche world, that I think is a little bit undervalued. And then the whole point is that every single one of us are all of these things. So we're all mentors, we're all peers, we're all apprentices at all times. I still have a bunch of guys that are mentors with me that are older than me, younger than me, different shapes and sizes than me, all kinds of them. And then I have a bunch of young folks that I'm trying to help get into things. And then I have my shredder crew. And it's like, hey, okay, let's go do the thing. So then we can all be good backcountry citizens by following these bits of etiquette, having compassion, having empathy for each other. And then again, we can be kind to each other when we're out there. And then the last thing is, and we can toast for this one, if you got a beer, put it up in the air, be Ogden. If there's any questions or anything, we can do that, but we'll do it while we look at a glorious picture of Corey Davis shredding fantastic foul. Yep. Oh, my wife's on the stream from Wisconsin. Yeah, so the question that someone came off the stream is, are we supposed to gatekeep or not? I'm getting mixed signals. That is a fantastic question. It really is a fantastic question. It's like an argument for the ages. I mean, surfing and localism and all of these communities and the outdoors have these issues. We have them in Ogden just like anybody else. Being the kid from Wisconsin at 18, always want to like be able to say like gatekeeping is wrong. No, don't. But now being 43, having been in these mountains for 25 years, I understand where that perspective and that mentality comes from. And then I also think us being here in Ogden and Salt Lake being what Salt Lake is, I love Salt Lake. It's great. It is busy. I think that we have a little bit of a reaction to what's going on down there, kind of saying like, we don't want that. So we're doing things differently here. And then the gatekeeping question always wraps around to the I don't even want to say it out loud because then we'll really get into it. Always wraps into the guidebook question. Like, that's just gatekeeping. That's just gatekeeping. It should be knowledge, whatever. And I think it's a bit of a reaction to like Wasatch Backcountry Skiing Map in Salt Lake and all the information down there and all the people and how busy it is. And so I feel like there's a little bit of that here. Is that right or wrong? Have decided that I'm not here to say whether it's right or wrong. I will, but like going back to the social media thing, having been an athlete who's pumping out the content and then being a ski guide who's selling the service, I have dealt with that probably more than anybody I know. And like the anonymous account was just one example. And so that's why I always wish I want to be on that side of the argument. But what I've done for myself, and this is, I guess, what my advice is for this situation, is just decide where these things are at for you and then go forth as such. Because this isn't like black and white stuff. This is like degrees of what you want to do or not as an individual. And so I've made some personal rules of my own, one of which I'm not willing to write the guidebook. If there were a handful of people that could, I might be one of those people, but I'm not willing to be that person to write the guidebook. So I'm not going to do it. If it ever comes out, I'll have mixed feelings maybe, but that's not going to be coming from me. And I've also joked and said that if you write the guidebook, you probably have to move the next day, but maybe that's gatekeeping. I don't know. But we have that here. It's a thing. And it's been a thing for a long time. There was an avalanche. I don't know, maybe I'm going too deep, but there was an avalanche. Is this? No, we're good? Okay. There was an avalanche years and years and years ago, and I was part of the rescue effort, if you will. And we were all a group of different members of the backcountry community in the search and rescue trailer. And we're trying to put together what the eyewitness account was based on where the person might be. And like, me and my buddy that was with me were talking about the same terrain with one set of names, and this other group of folks were talking about the same terrain with a different set of names. And then the group from SAR, this was a long, long time ago, they didn't know the area at all. And so I had an epiphany in that moment, like, man, we are all calling the same things by different names. Like, and that might be the part where the guidebook is useful and has value, is like, now we're all talking the same language, using the same names. Without giving too much information, the professional level in the Ogden Mountains is all on the same page now with shared resources. And so we are using the same names, but people from the outside public that are coming in and don't have those resources don't know that. And this is the part where being kind kind of out in the world with each other kind of helps that information trickle through, right? Where he talked about be a good mentor trickles through. When I can go out and I can meet these two guys up on the bench and they're like, hey, this, that. And I'm like, yeah, okay, this is this. And if you go over here and this is the route. Now they're going to go forward. They're going to use the routes I think they should use. They're going to use the established routes and they're going to use the same name. So if they have a problem or if they see something they want to report, they can at least use the right name. Or if they have a rescue situation or whatever, at least we're all talking the same language. And that kid, or that guy, whoever it was. Yeah, I was wondering if the guidebook was going to come up, but maybe I just threw that in there. But yeah, anything else from the internet? No, anybody? Nice. My family lives in Wisconsin when I'm out here the last few years. Some of my wife's saying I just put them all to sleep. A little bedtime story. Turns out the 7-year-old doesn't know anything about avalanches. We'll get to that. Any questions from you guys? There's one.
What is the correct parking in North Fork? Because I always just go to the street because I'm like, this parking lot is shit.
Oh yeah. No, I think Bill at one point told me what like his preferred like what would that be? Schematic. His preferred schematic would be where he thinks we could fit the most cars. There's no set rule there really. It's like mostly like don't double park or like what most people do. And so you've got, I thought I was gonna put a picture of it in here, but it's like a half circle, right? At that corner for the north gate. Most people were just stuffing nose in around the periphery. Then sometimes they'll do a little lane in between, but you just got to make sure everybody can get out. I think where we get ourselves into trouble is when we do start parking on the street, in big snow years especially, that road starts to tunnel in a bit. And maybe this is a place where we could take a book or a page out of the book from Tom and the Tahoe folks, is like maybe shovel it out a little bit so you can get off. Because you think about my good buddy Rob that lives right up the street, coming to work in the morning, comes around that corner. If you got 300 cars all way out into the road, and he's a backcountry skier, he gets it. But if we can get off to the side as best we can, I think that's the best we can do with that spot. It's a tough spot. And then at the south gate, when you park at the Nordic Center, they want all of us dirty backcountry skiers up in that far corner of the lot. So you pull in, you got the yurt and the parking, and then there's a parking lot in the back. They love it when we go all the way to that back corner. And it takes a little bit off your approach too. So you just come in around the back. Anything else? I thought I had more for that, but I got nothing else. You know, one trick I do too sometimes when I have avalanche courses is a carpool if you can. The lot by Valley Market is pretty well smashed by Powder Mountain these days. But like Rainbow Gardens is fantastic carpool. But then what I'll do sometimes too is if I have to put them on the street, I'll take my Burley Toyota Sienna minivan and like push into that bank a little for my students to like get them in there nice and tight. That's the lazy man's way. I could just break out the shovel, but my wife is watching this. Dude, yeah. Where did all the scratches on the bumper come from? I don't know. Grocery store parking lot, probably. Anybody got anything else? Oh, yeah. No, dude, we're here. I'm here for it. Yeah. You know, he brought up guidebook again. No, I get it. No, I actually, like I said, I'm not actually like dead set for or against it. I just have decided I'm not going to be the one. But it's a big undertaking. And you might have to move. I don't know. It wouldn't be me. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Nordic Valley. Yeah. Yeah, there you go. Geolocate in the office at Nordic Valley. Last chance. Going once. Oh, one in the back. Yeah. Yeah, I was just about to give you my day rate. Yeah. This is the part where I talk about mentor for hire. Yeah, mentor for hire. Yeah. No, I think that's important stuff. I have a couple of young guys that I do mentor. I actually had a free Saturday out of nowhere the other day, and I called both of them up, and the one was like, oh, I got to get ready for a free ride camping. And I was like, I'd love to. He goes, I haven't been out since I was out with you last time, so I might not be in that great shape. I'm like, this is exactly why we do this. I'm going to be your motivator. Get out there. Let's go. So, anything else? That is exiting 27th Street. And that's the legend, the man, the myth himself, Ben Geiger, on a beautiful day after we first ascended something and came out at sunset. This one, if you'll notice, the background is not incredibly ambiguous. If you know, you know. Thank you very much.
So you see.